We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com.
Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. This will be coming out towards the end of the CES week, but we're recording it earlier in the week, so we don't have all the news and all the stories. We were able to see the preview event sort of coverage that was posted mostly on Monday there, but that's about it. So we'll split up our CES coverage across a couple of weeks here, and other stories.
Looking forward to that Enron nuclear egg thing. That looks pretty awesome.
I didn't see that. Is that anything, or was that a pure joke? I don't know.
No, I mean it is a joke, but I didn't make it. Enron made it.
Okay. I did catch the summarized versions of LG's press conference and Nvidia's press conference, and
I've been getting tons of under embargo emails from all kinds of companies and stuff like that, but I haven't even opened a single one of them because I've been way too busy.
The Nvidia press conference, I'm like, he's saying things in English, but are those words? Are those sentences? Does that actually mean anything? The stuff that was said in the Nvidia press conference, and then the LG one was like, they were like, hey, Black Mirror, hold my beer. That's because we're going to present to you the single man talking to his AI in every corner of his life with what I can only assume is a son that only exists in this man's mind, because the son never appears, and the son talks like an AI from upstairs, disembodied voice. I'm like,
fake family.
It was a horrifying vision of the future.
They're just in another room.
Or not even the future, the present. Horrifying vision of the present that they were apparently thinking was great marketing. So yeah, those were fun. The press conferences there, the early ones. But CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, going on in Las Vegas right now, where nothing else of note happened in Las Vegas the past week, the first week of the new year. It's the only thing of note that happened there, right?
I honestly don't know. There's been like so many things that have happened in since the beginning of this year, that it's been just like, hey, in case you were wondering if this year was going to become any better than last year or the last decade,
off to a rollicking start.
I did have a conversation with my children at the dinner table the other day about how, every generation looks back on previous generations and says, how did we live through that? Or more importantly, how did you live through that? Because, I'm Gen X, so there's the whole, people... My generation loves to we were so self-reliant that we didn't come home until the street lights came on.
Our parents said, kid thing.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if that's, first of all, not all of you came home. Okay, let's just go there. Let's just start with not all of you came home, and the police, all they said was, they ran away.
Right.
They ran away. They didn't run away. That's not what happened. So no, that's not, our childhood was not some sort of magical thing where we had free reign to do whatever we wanted, and it was all just roaming gangs of kids, having snowball fights or something like that, and getting into hijinks. No, it was awful. And how did we live through that? And also, someday my children are going to have to explain to their kids or their grandkids, like driving your own car, and also the internet without any sort of policing. Where it's just like, you mean you could just talk to anybody on the internet? Like, adults could pretend to be kids and just talk to you and try to get you to meet them in parks? Like, oh yeah. Also, how did you not die? Well, some of us did.
The wonderful notion of a shared reality and an objective truth. These are things that will need to be explained to the future generation, because they will not exist.
They will not exist. So, yes, it has been an interesting beginning of the year. Welcome to 2025.
Yeah.
Everything is on fire.
Quite literally.
I will say that we had, if it's CES, just remember it's my anniversary. Okay.
Gotcha.
That's just the way that works. So I missed my anniversary for years and years going to be there. Like, you want to come to CES this year? No, I do not. Like, I'd like to spend the anniversary with my wife because CES sucks. And it has not gotten any better over the years, I'll be honest with you. And I hate Las Vegas anyways. And I don't hate Las Vegas as a town. I hate Las Vegas as a concept. It's just, it feels predatory. The entire time you're there, it just feels predatory. And I'm sure the people who live there do not have the same experience. But as somebody who's on the strip and, having to go to these big hotels and stuff like that, and walking around, it just feels gross.
Yeah, the folks I've been looking at to get some of the news coverage, they've just been commenting on how, because there's the early preview event, starts on Sunday or even Saturday. Before the actual show floor opens, before the actual conference officially begins, but they've all been commenting on how they just can't see anything, they can't make their videos, they can't do their audio segments because there are so many influencers there now, all with a press badge, that they're like, okay, this is just unmanageable at this year's CES. So that's what we've done so far.
So in my life, things have we finally turned in our contents list. For those of you that have been following that, that's just us having to go through. And at some point, the insurance company just wears you down. There's like, we will literally pay you for everything that you lost.
Wow. As
long as you have a picture of it and can put it on a spreadsheet, a name.
Okay.
And then tell us how much it would cost to replace.
Okay.
And you're like, okay, well, that's fine. Just do that for your refrigerator.
Okay.
I dare you. Because not all of it has a label on it. Let's start with that. And also, you've got all this, like you cook some food, you're like, oh, we have some extra spaghetti sauce. I'll put that in the freezer. Right? So it just takes forever. So they basically wear you down. There's and at some point you're leaving thousands of dollars on the table because you just refuse to nickel and dime yourself, because your time is worth more than figuring out how much if it's $1.50 bottle of hot sauce or $1.75 bottle of hot sauce. Oh,
literally the contents inside the fridge. Okay, I was a little confused. Okay.
Every single item that you lost can and they will cover.
Oh,
up to your either maximum limit or your deductible. And remember, if you go past your maximum limit, you can claim those dollars on your taxes in some form. I don't know exactly how it works. My wife's good with numbers. I am good with. What am I good with? Anyways, so
you're a good communicator.
We just gave up.
Yeah.
We just at some point you just like, okay, we've claimed well over $100,000 in lost things, contents in the, and remember that doesn't include appliances. So appliances are out.
Wow.
Complete. So it's not like it is furniture, but it's not like your cabinets. It's not any of that stuff. It's just like the things that you bought to put in your house. So we just at some point you give up and you just turn it in and you say, there you go.
Okay.
Let me know. Just get back to me with whatever arguments you have against certain specific things, and they'll come up with something.
Oh, because they will nickel and dime. You might not, will, but they will.
Yes. Yeah, so we give up. They're happy to make you do all this work. It is a full-time job. So we gave up. So now we are pushing headlong into making a decision about what we're going to do with the house. We've been oscillating back and forth, so we don't know exactly what we're going to do, but we're going to have a couple of meetings this week that should, by hopefully next podcast, I will say, this is what we're doing. And once that happens, I cannot tell you, and I know a lot of people who are in the same situation I am, I cannot tell you the relief people feel. They do not. It's very much like the Joker said in Dark Knight. No one cares if the plan is awful as long as there's one. As long as somebody has a plan of some sort.
Part of the plan, yeah.
And it really is. This whole nebulous, like my parents in particular, I mean, and they're retired. They have nothing to do. They really do have nothing to do. I mean, if you talk to them, they're very busy. But they're very busy doing nothing, honestly. I cannot stress enough how much free time they have. And there is we can't even think about this stuff. It's too stressful. It is. It is very stressful.
And it's one of those, the only way to do it is like one thing at a time, one foot in front of the other. But if you take a half second for a step back to survey the situation, it just is daunting and overwhelming. Yeah.
Yes.
It defeats you inside your mind before you begin. I totally understand that. Yeah.
So we're trying to, they have kind of, taken what I would call the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. Any opportunity that kind of came their way for them to not have to think about a thing, they said yes to it.
Okay.
So I think in the end, they're going to end up having a lot more stress because these least resistance paths are going to fall through and they're not going to come through as the way they expected them to. But we will see. We will see where they end up. But I'm hopeful that by the end of this week we will have met with enough people, talked to enough people, and we'll come up with a plan.
Okay.
That will put us. That we will then. Ooh. Yes, and I know it's been there's many people in my neighborhood who are moving back into their houses right now, and our house is just sitting there essentially full of crap. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like there is a little bit of furniture in there. It all has to really be discarded at some point. We'll probably have to pay for that since we didn't do it early enough. But there's also all the cabinets are taken off of the walls and stuff like that, and people's houses in my neighborhood are getting burgled by people who are just breaking in because there's nobody around to stop them. And there's not a lot of stuff in there they can take. We've gotten rid of most of it, but there's still no one wants that. It's bad enough that you had to go through this to have somebody just break into your house just to kind of rummage around.
And then you can't take a picture of it for your insurance claim.
Yes, look how much more messy it is. Yeah. So it is what it is. It's been, the support of the AVRant community has been great. I can't thank everybody enough. For those of you, even just letting me kind of vent at the beginning of these podcasts, which I know is probably for some people like, oh my God, can we not hear about this guy's stupid life anymore?
But we also know other people are very much interested in hearing it, so...
Yeah,
there's that
so if you are irritated by that, believe me, I hold no ill will towards you by thinking
we've got
that
the
because I feel that way about a lot of people's lives as well.
We've got the timestamps, so you don't have to skip the entire podcast. You can just go past the intro, and it's pretty easy that way.
And like I said, I hold no ill will towards you because it is. I mean, I'm living through it, and it sucks. And I would hate to have to hear about it. So. But that's not going to stop me from talking about it because it helps me.
That's right. It's a little bit of therapy.
Speaking of helping me, Rob, how's things going with you?
So kind of just waiting and seeing, playing things by ear right now as far as all that goes. But yeah, everybody's safe, everybody's uninjured. Everybody is accounted for and their belongings are accounted for at this point. So I count it all as A-OK for the time being. Yeah.
Good. All right. Let's see here. What should we talk about? What we watched? Since I have watched a couple of comedy specials on. I think Hulu has got like a month of comedy or something like that.
Yeah.
Most of it sucks, and because we're having to watch it in like the common area, since this entire apartment is a common area, there are. Comics like to talk about things I don't necessarily need my 15-year-old son to be thinking about. And let me just do a quick aside. I'm sorry. So I have 3 sons. We have a 3-bedroom apartment.
Okay.
Everybody's been home for the winter break, and one of them just went back this weekend to college. Mm-hmm. So he is gone, so that's freed up a little bit of room. But my eldest son is going to go back to college. He's going to go back sooner than this, but he has secured an apartment. He didn't get housing.
Yeah.
USF, University of South Florida, has changed how they do housing, and it's like a complete lottery. If you're not a freshman, it's a complete lottery situation, and he did not get it. Mm-hmm. So for the semester, he. We spent all weekend, he and I, going to different apartments in and around the college, and he found something he liked, and he signed his paperwork yesterday. So he will be moving in on the 15th, which means there will be a free bedroom in this house, which I will then immediately convert into an office for me and my wife to argue over, because we will both want to use it at the same time. But we will at least have something. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. We will have... I will have an office soon. And then things will go a little bit back to normal. We will start being able to do interviews. Hopefully,
we'll see.
we will start to be able to, if like today, once again, because nothing in the universe can happen unless it's between 10 and 12 on Tuesday mornings. Because that's when we record the podcast.
Yeah.
At 9:30 a.m., there's a knock at the door, and like, I am not joking. It is not that big of an apartment,
right.
and these bedrooms are not that big.
Mm-hmm.
6 or 7 dudes rolled in here to go fix some drywall in my son's room, and I'm like, I mean, they were going to have power tools. They had a compressor. I mean, there was no way I was doing this podcast.
No. At least with that many guys, it did go reasonably quickly, and it should have, but...
It did.
It did have to be right at podcast recording
yes, I
time.
watched some comedy specials. Nothing of real note. The new Nate Bargatze one is not his best work, but it is still funny. So I like Nate. I mean, Mr.
Wasn't there a Bobby Lee one as well? He was supposed to do a Hulu comedy special, I think.
Probably. We didn't watch them all.
Okay.
But I've been putting them on kind of when we have a little bit more time to sit down.
Yeah.
And we don't want to start watching like 3. My wife will not watch like 2 or 3, 3 or any more than 2 episodes of a show before she's like, let's watch something else. So I put on just something that it's not that important. If we decide we don't like it, we just turn it off, sort of thing. So we watched a couple. The Nate Bargatze one is probably the best of the ones I saw. I think that's on Netflix. And like I said, I've seen a lot of his work. He's very funny. This one was just okay. I mean, it was still funny, but it was there usually at least 1 or 2 points in his shows. I will be rolling. I will be like having a hard time breathing, laughing, and that did not happen in this one.
Okay.
So, but overall, it was fine. If you're into him or you want some clean comedy, and that's the key here. He does not curse. He doesn't really talk about things that are all that
risque.
Scandalous or whatever. So it's certainly one you can watch with your family.
Okay. So I just watched one movie this week. That was it, and it was Cuckoo. That's the movie that I watched. Pretty recent movie. I think it was a 2024 film. So this is starring...
I've heard of this one.
Yeah, this is starring Hunter Schafer and Dan Stevens.
Nope. I don't know who either is.
Well, you would know Dan Stevens if you saw from Legion. He was the main character in Legion. That's Dan Stevens.
Oh,
yeah.
David. He played David in Legion. Oh yes, I love him. He's great.
Yeah. So he is by far
super talented.
Yes,
that guy is super talented.
He is by far the most entertaining part of the movie Cuckoo, which is I mean, I guess it's classified as a horror. It's sort of elevated horror. It was Neon Pictures that put this one out, but it has a lot of the sort of A24 feel. So A24 and Neon are trading back and forth on these, not very expensive, but well-written, well-executed movies, and I'm enjoying a lot of them. So yeah, Dan Stevens doing his version of a German accent and to hilarious effect because he insists on mispronouncing all of the American characters' names in a German accent, which is like they keep correcting him and he's like, nope, I'm just gonna keep saying it this way. So yeah, I mean, he was by far the most entertaining part of this movie, but Hunter Schafer's performance really, really strong in this. Really, really liked her performance. Probably know her from Euphoria. So got known, Hunter Schafer is trans, born male, but is now female, and has said very publicly how, she doesn't want to only play trans characters. Like, that's how got her start in Euphoria, got well known in that show for being a trans character, as well as a trans actor, but absolutely nothing about that in this, and she's just like, I'm a woman, and I'm just going to play female roles, and that's as simple as that. So really, really strong performance in this. I can't say I was like in love with the sort of monster in this movie because it's a little bit of a monster movie. Relies really heavily on the sound. Most of your getting creeped out in this movie is going to be based on the sound. So you want to watch this in a home theater setting. You want to watch it loud. You want to have your surround sound fully going because that's where most of the creep effect in this comes from. If you're watching this movie quietly or on a laptop without headphones or something like that, you're really not going to find this movie very scary at all, I don't think. I mean, it's got some weird little twists in it. What I basically felt was they sort of set up kind of like 3 mysterious things that are going on, and it takes a while to piece together kind of what's happening. So I was mildly, I wouldn't say frustrated, but I was just kind of waiting and seeing through quite a bit of it, because it didn't make a whole lot of sense what I was watching for about the first half of this movie. So, I like to sort of prepare people, if anybody's listening to what I'm saying before they watch the movie, just go in knowing that, things do end up getting told to you. You do find out what's going on and how the sort of 3 mysterious things do fit together in this story, but it's not one of these ones that makes it evident as you go. You have to be a bit patient with it. It's only an hour and a half long movie, so it's not like you're waiting forever, but you got to kind of be willing to just muddle through the actual plot events and kind of what's going on, because they don't really dole out the information. It's kind of stringy along, and then all at once it all sort of makes sense. So anyway, I quite enjoyed this movie. It's not going to be like my favoritist ever, or probably make a top 10. It's not quite that type of level, but I give it a thumbs up for sure.
I did have a friend watch the Descent recently, like just in the last couple of days, and she was like, "Oh man, I hated that movie." I'm like, "How could you hate that movie? That movie is like one of the best horror movies probably."
Well, I mean, if
ever.
you really don't like being scared or claustrophobic, I mean, if that makes you,
she likes horror movies though, and she has told me as much. So I was kind of surprised, and she's like, "Yeah, I couldn't tell what was going on. I could never tell who was getting killed. All these other things." I was like, "Oh, your TV's not properly calibrated."
You watch it on LCD TV with the lights on.
She's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, your TV's not properly calibrated."
I can see that.
Like you've got some setting in there is wrong, and it's not that hard to figure this stuff out. And it's pretty
Crush
common.
Going on. That's a tough movie to watch.
Yeah, you're not gonna. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Like it's just
a single lighter screen is the light source for most of the scenes in that movie. So yeah.
So it's funny that you meet people and they hate a movie, and you're like, what is wrong with you? Oh, it's not you. It's how you experienced it.
If you watched Cuckoo and didn't have the sound turned up, I don't think you'd like it very much at all. Yeah.
Well, remember we talked about that with A Quiet Place Part 2, where people, where we were watching it, there's no surround sound. The sound is pretty. I mean, I think it's just the TV speakers.
Yeah.
And you're just like, they're like, "Oh, this movie's not very scary."
Yeah,
I'm like, yeah, it's not. Because it's the sound is not. I mean, the picture is not what makes it scary. It's the sound that makes it scary, and you have terrible sound in this house. So I don't know what to tell you other than that. All right, let's get to the started here. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask yes by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Come to the website, find our shows, our show notes, our Flickr album, so you can follow along with the pictures as well as previous episodes. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant. Contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His socials is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. I'm not really doing social anymore. I've aged out. Somebody told me I had to follow them on Instagram if I wanted to be their friend.
Okay.
And I was like, you will literally be the only person I follow on Instagram because I have not signed into that app on purpose since it's been years. I want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and send us a PayPal donation. Or you can go to patreon.com/avrant podcast and become one of our monthly contributors, monthly listener contributor, subscriber. I don't know. 132 patrons currently. Patreon will take some amount of money from you, whichever you tell them to take, minimum of $1, and give most of it to us. So that's 132 patrons, and we thank all of you.
Yeah, that is, once again, patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thanks to our 132 patrons over there. It is the beginning of a new month since the last time we recorded, so a couple people dropped off. Their expiration dates on their credit cards were the 1st of 2025.
Right. I don't know. I had a new credit card that I had just put in, and it when the new year flipped, it was like your credit card's expired. I'm like, no, it hasn't. And they made me re-input everything because I don't know why. It was weird. There's other ways to support us. Gurinder sent Rob the movie codes that we mentioned last week, and they both worked. So Gurinder, we have done that service for you.
That's right.
You can now use those movie codes.
Sure. That's exactly how it works.
That's how it works.
Giant wink, giant wink.
Brandon double-checked to make sure that I received an Amazon gift card he sent, and I did. Thank you very much, Brandon. I have a plan for that. This is the problem. When it goes into the Amazon...
Yeah, the gift card pool.
Amazon, then if I don't immediately spend it, then it becomes everyone's money. So I have to find something that is the right amount and say, I am buying this with that gift card. Okay. And I have to do it soon. I have a plan. I just haven't quite figured out the product I want yet. So thank you very much, Brandon. It'll probably be bike related, but it may be AV related the way things are going around here. Yeah. We do need to get a piece of furniture. But again, we've been focused so much on the contents list and figuring out what we're going to do at our house. We're just not really thinking about that sort of stuff yet. Nathan offered to let me adapt any of his home theater Substack articles to use on the AV Gadgets, which is very nice of him. Thank you very much, Nathan. I may take you up on that. We'll let you know.
So thank you, Gurinder. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Nathan.
We also got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going through. I'll be honest with you. A rough couple of days of the first of the year. It hasn't been didn't exactly just slide right into the new year. No. It was more of a blah, 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 like you accidentally drove off the road and hit those bumps. So
that's maybe not the best analogy to use given what occurred there, but awkward.
Yeah, that is actually true. I'm sorry about that. For anybody that feels like that was in bad taste, believe me, it was in
not thinking about it taste.
I had actually not forgotten that one had happened. Forgot about that one. And that's just unfortunate because I know people who live in that city. So, family. They have notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going from Stefan J. Gurinder, who says the podcast has been a welcome distraction. Someone in his family passed away recently. With everything taking place over the holidays, it hasn't really hit him yet. Sorry about that, Gurinder. Yeah,
our condolences. Sorry to hear that.
Karl, Vince, Dan, Nathan just started listening to the podcast again since he and his wife had a daughter last year. They've been busy. Understood, Nathan. That's Nathan D. Mm-hmm. Then Nathan W. has been listening since the Dina days and has enjoyed the ride. Dazz, Eliezer has been away from listening to the podcast for a while, but he's pleasantly surprised and so glad to find that we're still in it.
Yeah.
Wow, you guys haven't given up yet? Ha!
Well, I think it's just because a lot of other podcasts have come and gone in the time that we've been here. So,
I mean, literally almost all of them. I mean,
well, not all
Anthony
the podcasts.
And Tony.
Yeah.
Anthony and Tony. So Stefan, J. Gurinder, Karl, Vince, Dan, Nathan D, Nathan W, Dazz, Eliezer, Anthony, and Tony. Thank you very much for thanking us.
That's right. I'll say the names one more time so they came from my lips. Stefan B, J, Gurinder, Karl, Vince, Dan, Nathan D, Nathan W, Dazz, Eliezer, Anthony, and Tony B. Thank you all so much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. We definitely appreciate them these days. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
In the news. Again, we'll have CES news next
this is
week.
CES news,
I know
but
it is, but
we'll
have more. We'll have the majority. Whatever it is that you're saying that we're not saying, that'll be next week. The HDMI Forum officially announced their new HDMI 2.2 spec at CES 2025. The new upper bandwidth limit is 96 gigabits per second, so doubling that of HDMI 2.1, 48 gigabits per second bandwidth. Oh, good, because nothing ever bad happened with bandwidth.
No chance of signal dropouts when we're reaching those types of speeds.
No, don't worry. It'll be fine. As previously mentioned, this is to allow for higher resolutions and higher frame rates, things that we often need these days. And the new HDMI cable certification is called Ultra96.
Yeah, I mean, they already had ultra high speed premium, so I was like, okay, what are you gonna do?
What's the 96
beyond
from?
Ultra? Well, 96 is for the 96 gigabits per second. Yeah, so that's actually more descriptive. I don't mind that. It's just Ultra 96 certification now. It's kind of easier. I kind of like it.
HDMI device manufacturers will be able to start using the new specification in the first half of 2025, and along with the increased bandwidth, there's a new latency indication protocol that is meant to improve audio and video synchronization, especially in multi-hop systems with additional devices in between the source and the display. Oh, good.
Yeah. Because, HDMI lip sync has never failed before. This is something that needs to be addressed and can definitely be improved. So fingers crossed it actually works in some
sort
form
of like
or
when
fashion.
your toddler tells you they've baked some brownies for you. They hand you the brownie on a plate, and you look at it and you're like, it looks exactly right. And then you ask if they follow the recipe. They said, yeah, I even made it better.
But this is also
HDMI.
This is also very much reminding me of how, you remember when we had a whole bunch of what anybody in the home theater community would have called HDMI 2.0 devices, because they had the 18 gigabits per second maximum bandwidth, not 48 or 40 or anything above 18. They had the 18 gigabits per second bandwidth, but it was a television with HDMI 2.0 bandwidth ports, but it supported eARC, right? So they started calling it HDMI 2.1 because one of the features that falls under the HDMI 2.1 spec, that being HDMI eARC, was a supported feature. So they said, we've got HDMI 2.1 ports, right? And the HDMI LLC allows for that because they're like, yeah, we don't want you talking about spec numbers. We want you talking about features, but everybody wants the spec number to be a form of shorthand. This is just this fight between home theater enthusiasts and the actual licensing board and the specifications board and all this type of stuff. So, this latency indication protocol, it doesn't require 96 gigabits per second of bandwidth. This is absolutely something that, in fact, I would hope is backwards compatible with all previous versions of HDMI, because the notion that you would have to have all HDMI 2.2 spec 96 gigabit per second ports on all devices just to support the latency indication protocol makes no sense at all, right? Why wouldn't this be something where your 4K 60 source, which doesn't need HDMI 2.1, let alone HDMI 2.2 type of bandwidth, that's the thing where I want this latency indication protocol to work. But as soon as that feature gets supported, are they going to be claiming, hey, we have HDMI 2.2 support? Because the one feature from that new specification is the thing we're supporting. I just envision that is absolutely going to happen. Yeah, good on you, HDMI LC. Just keep fighting that good fight.
You keep trying.
Yeah.
You just do your best. And that's all you can do. Yeah. Is just try to do your best. You just show up.
If you show up, to be fair, it really isn't their fault, because it's the manufacturers. They're like, you can't make mandates on what we support. If we put the new spec number on there, it's up to us. And they're like, yeah, we just want you to adopt it so we won't fight you. Yeah.
At this point, don't you think they have enough of a stranglehold that they can start flexing their muscles a little bit? Don't you think that they've been the de facto connection?
DisplayPort is still out there. They have to fear DisplayPort. We have to support
this feature, then we're dropping you. They're not going to drop you.
No,
shut up.
Yeah, nobody's dropping HDMI at this point.
I feel like if I had been in the audience when they made this announcement at CES, you could have heard the rolling of the eyes.
Yes,
as they were happening.
That was quite the big shift in camera angle there. So,
did I move my?
Yeah, sure.
Did I move my thing? Sorry, the thing is. Tell me if I'm back right.
No, that's good.
Right?
That's good. You're good where you are now.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. I keep forgetting the cameras are connected to this. It's just I'm at a weird angle to the screen, so it's washing out. It's a little harder to see.
Fun times.
My stupid glasses. All right. LG announced a new 2025 OLED TV lineup at CES 2025. The B5 series is essentially unchanged from 2024's B4 series. C5 is also much the same, although they claim a slight boost in peak brightness, which of course they do.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much all of LG's talk about the new AI features.
They're
God
horrifying vision of what AI will be.
I was sending a text to a friend using voice to text on my new phone that has the stupid AI integrated all over it.
The voice to text is not really AI.
The amount of extraneous punctuation in seemingly random places is just appalling. As I was saying, look at all this terrible punctuation that is putting in all these random places. It stuck question marks in there, periods in the middle of thoughts. It is atrocious. So, oh, good.
Yeah, no, their demonstration of their like in-car AI system, the LG in-car AI system thing.
Wrong? How could it go wrong?
I mean, I understand that they were trying to fit in a whole bunch of examples into a short amount of time, but just the the experience of like being interrupted during your commute every couple of seconds to be like, oh, there's a blockage up ahead. Would you like me to reroute in this direction? Okay, that's fine. Oh, by the way, along this route is your favorite coffee shop. Would you like to stop at there?
Literally crash my car into a tree.
On and on. And then the poor, like I say, single guy with the imaginary kid gets home and it's just like, oh, it looks like you forgot your umbrella at work. Would you like me to order you? And it's like, hey, think, because that's how you address the LG OS. It's the thin Q, but it's think. Hey, think, could you maybe shut the hell up? Like, that was my only thought to the LG AI system. Could you leave me alone for one solitary second? Is that within your AI capabilities? Oh, it was talking about...
My 15-year-old child,
yes.
I took his electronics away for a day or whatever it was because he needed to focus on something.
Yeah.
And he didn't stop talking. Like, I'm like, take a breath, kid.
Right.
Take a freaking breath. You are killing me.
Yes.
And I'm trying to be a good father, but I will tell you right now, no electronic device in my life is ever going to be that annoying to me and not have me destroy it.
I mean, the dude was like talking because they had the little future wheelie LG robot that roams around your house so that it has eyes to look everywhere. And it was like, oh, we noticed that your imaginary son, as far as I can tell, that son was totally imaginary. We noticed your imaginary son was like restless at like 3:30 a.m. early this morning, and we think it's because maybe the temperature was too low. So we went ahead and raised the temperature in his room by 5 degrees, and he hasn't been restless since. And don't worry, we'll wake him up in time for school. And the guy's like, that's great. I never have to see my imaginary kid again. He can be upstairs and I can be downstairs and I can be out of the house before he even wakes up.
Look at this problem you invented and then fixed and then patted yourself on the back for.
And I'm like, 5 degrees? You raised the freaking temperature 5 degrees? Like, that's...
Well,
that's
5 degrees Celsius is a lot more than 5 degrees Fahrenheit, but still 5 degrees Fahrenheit is a considerable amount.
In the demo, they raised it from 70 Fahrenheit to 75 Fahrenheit at night. I'm like, who the heck sleeps at 75 Fahrenheit at night? What are you doing,
People who sleep naked without any sheets on. That's who do it.
I'm like,
That's weird.
He's not restless anymore because he sweated all of his like perspiration out of his body. He's completely dehydrated and
He's
unconscious
a
in his
husk
bed.
of a fake child.
Send the little wheelie robot in there because the dad sure as heck isn't going to check
your child
on him.
for him. He is medium rare. You can retrieve him whenever you like. We put him in the fridge to keep him for you. The G5 had a pretty big surprise though. Micro lens array is gone because why would you want that?
It was here for 2 years.
When you could have AI instead. Instead, they're using a new 4-layer instead of 3-layer OLED stack, and the new 4-layer stack offers a significant boost in light output, especially full screen, which is now about 100 nits brighter sustained. G5 also gets 165 hertz VRR, and there's now a 48-inch model, and all G5 TVs come with a flush wall mount and no stand. So, there you go.
Yeah, and guess what'll be in the G6? You want it even brighter? Now it's a 4-layer stack and MLA, because that's the way we can bring it back and boost that brightness even further. There's my prediction for next year's CES.
All right. The M5 series is the G5 series, but with LG's Zero Connect box, and it tops out at 144 hertz for VRR.
That's it.
There you go. Variable refresh rate for those of you who are like, what's
right,
VRR? Yeah. Variable refresh rate. But I guess the max is 144 hertz. But
the wireless is limiting. They can't go to 165.
Yeah. Samsung was mostly showing off 83-inch OLEDs, but they were all using LG Display WOLED panels, WOLED panels. No sign of the rumored 83-inch QD OLED panels at the show. The S95F series does have an improved anti-glare 2.0 matte screen finish that retains the inky black levels better under ambient light, and they're bringing that same matte finish to many of their mini LED LCD TVs as well. They showed.
I was really quite quite pleased to see that because the demonstrations they were pretty convincing. I mean, I realize this is under show lights, this is with people's cameras and that, but it was pretty readily apparent because they had like the side-by-side comparison, last year's anti-glare finish to this year's anti-glare finish, and that was one of my criticisms, right, with that S95 because they skipped F, so it was D from 2024. Like one of the criticisms was, it does a great job of you don't see direct reflections in that TV screen anymore, but with the bright lights on, it's like, the inky black of OLED just doesn't look inky black anymore. It kind of turned to a dull gray. And this, maybe it wasn't perfect inky black, but it was noticeably better than last year's. So I'm like, I'm all for that improvement.
All right. They showed the 115-inch QN90F 4K mini LED TV. Yes, the panel is sourced from TCL QM6K.
Yeah, that's TCL's actual manufacturing division, so they're the only ones with a 115-inch panel out there. So Samsung isn't manufacturing the actual panel. That's coming from TCL.
So the big splash was the Frame Pro. It has mini LEDs. The words local dimming appear on its poster, but don't get too excited. It's still edge lit.
Yeah.
So while the mini LED edge lighting should provide some picture quality improvements, the Pro part was mostly to do with Samsung's new Wireless One Connect box. They must be so mad that LG already stole the Zero Connect box name. The Wireless One Connect box uses Wi-Fi 7 for transmission and the proprietary compression codec from Samsung, so that line of sight is not necessary. So stand in front of it for a second.
You can put it in a cabinet. That's the major thing there. But yes, Frame Pro got all excited because I'm like, hey, this would be a great idea. You take the frame concept that people love and are apparently willing to pay exorbitant amounts of money for, but actually make it a good TV, which would be a remarkable, amazing thing that I could honestly quite get behind. And you're like, mini LED backlights. Yeah, local dimming. Ooh, sounds good. Maybe, edge lighting. And it's like, it's one strip. It's one edge. It's the bottom edge only. And the local dimming is just like columns of light going up from the bottom. It's the crappiest edge. It's not even where it's the horizontal edge lighting on either side so that the black bars in CinemaScope content can be nice and dark black. It's like, nope, they did the bottom up columns of it's pretty bad.
Close.
It's pretty bad. It is brighter though. It's brighter than the original The Frame. So there you go.
So TCL made it clear they will dribble out their new TV announcements over several months this year. So at CES 2025, they were only officially announcing the new QM6K series. It's basically last year's QM751 performance at a slightly lower price point.
Yeah.
So TCL did have... Well, okay, is that the end of that?
That was pretty much it. That was the only one that they officially announced. So the names are changing, right? We went from like Q650 to Q651, and now it's when they put the M in there, that means mini LEDs. So QM6K, it's going to be the QM7K, QM8K. So that's the naming convention they're going for. So
they did have a new 115-inch model on display, though, and the model number was 115 QM7K. So the spokesperson said it has a lower peak brightness and fewer zones of local dimming than the current 115 QM891G model. Okay, I will say the new naming is a little bit easier to say, at least. So I'll give it that.
But why they had to go with K? Because you got a 6K, a 7K, and 8K, but that has nothing to do with the resolutions.
Yes, clearly. So they didn't say the price is expected to be lower than $20,000. So there you go. Less than 20 grand.
Yeah, our predictions for, now that TCL is ramping up physical production of those 115-inch panels, now able to cut two of them from a single piece of mother glass with their larger fabrication facility. That is bringing prices of those 115-inchers down, so they're able to bring it to the 7 series. It was only in the 8 series last year. So, all indications are, yes, prices on 115-inch TVs will be coming down. Good news.
All right, great. So AWALL Vision announced the availability of their new affordable AWALL microLED displays.
And that is spelled differently. See, AWALL Vision is AWOL. That's AWALL Vision, but the AWALL microLED is AWALL. It's a hilarious homonym pun. It's an AWALL.
I'm looking at the display.
Yeah.
These pictures are impossible to see. Okay. AWAL is selling them direct to consumers after partnering with a Chinese micro-LED OEM, so expect those prices to go up pretty soon. The lineup starts with a 75-inch 6-module 21:9 aspect ratio for $7,000. And that can be expanded to an 81-inch 9-module 16:9 display. Okay, so these are kind of what we talked about. We kind of predicted, actually, years ago.
Yeah.
So the module is 27 inches, but that's the back plane electronics and processing. There are 9-inch wafers with the actual micro LEDs on them. So the wafers plug into the modules, and the modules stitch together to form the full display.
Yeah.
The wafers come in different pixel pitches from 0.9 millimeters being the closest together, with the 1.25 millimeters being the standard wafer, and the 1.5 millimeter option for a lower cost and lower resolution, which would be just fine if you were making a very big display.
That's right.
And sitting very far away,
yeah.
which is what we said. There's a 108-inch 16:9 using the 1.25 millimeter wafers for $22,000 that delivers 1080p resolution. The 0.9 millimeter version makes it 1440p resolution for $8,000 more. So $30,000. 135 and 162-inch sizes are also available. If you want 4K resolution, you have to go all the way up to the 162-inch size using the 0.9 millimeter wafers. The lowest price is $162. The lowest price for the 162-inch model is $60,000.
That would be the 1.5 millimeter pixel pitch option. Okay. So they didn't say what the price for the 4K, the most expensive, the closest together with the highest resolution at the 162-inch size. They didn't mention the price on that, but they're like, the 162 starts at $60,000. So, I mean, okay, $60,000, that's a huge amount of money. But we have to take it in consideration of what did Samsung's The Wall used to cost. Right. You know, so they had their like 110-inch that was $150,000. Right, this is considerably less expensive. So the prices are coming down. You know, $7,000 for a micro LED display. Now, granted, that's not even 16:9 at that point. That's a 21:9, 75-inch 21:9 display with, I think, around 720p resolution, because, you know, you have to get to the 108-inch before you're getting 1080p resolution. So, yeah, you know, it's lower resolution for sure. It's not even 16:9 to that, but, you know, $7,000, like, that's within striking distance of a lot of people, you know, if they're going that way, and then you can expand it. Now, they did mention that the only one you can expand is the 75-inch up to the 81-inch. You can't just keep adding panels, so you can't start with the 75 and end up at the 162 one day. Yeah, so you do have to pick your size before you begin, but they wanted that. They liked the idea of being able to start at this $7,000 price point and then expand it at least once.
Right. So the frame rate tops out at 60 hertz. Peak nits are 1,000. They claim a 100,000 hour lifespan, and the 10,000 to 1 contrast ratio means that black is not completely 100% zero.
Yeah.
Light output black.
Yeah, so these are limitations for sure. I mean, the peak nits at 1,000 nits, I'm not complaining about that. That's sufficient for the vast majority of HDR content. But 60 hertz max, that's a little bit, okay, yeah, some compromise was made there for sure. And then, yeah, it's not infinity to 1 contrast, so it's not the true black. There's some just sort of ongoing electrical level there. But they said the 75 and the 81-inch ones, they just plug into a regular 115-volt household outlet. No special outlet needed for the 75 and 81-inch versions, which is kind of new for a micro LED. The other ones, though, the larger sizes, they need a 220-volt outlet, so you got to put in a little bit more electrical power there.
So, Hisense. So Hisense also had a micro LED display to showcase. Their 136-inch MX model can do 120 hertz with VRR, so that's a step up over the AWAL offerings, no matter how you want to spell AWAL.
Yeah,
so
but they didn't say price. We didn't hear what the resolution is on that one, but being Hisense, they are definitely going to target a lower price point than Samsung, for example. So it's all just evidence that, okay, micro LED hasn't died. Progress is being made. Prices are coming down little by little. So I kind of like this. You know, you put all the electronics into sort of this 27-inch frame module. That way they can have the processing and they link together that way. And then you have these little wafers. So if anything goes wrong on one of those wafers, you can replace a wafer rather than having to replace the entire module. I like that.
That'd be interesting to see how that would work out in the long run. You know, 50,000 hours of use later. You're like, oh, I got to replace a wafer. Replace it. How much brighter is it?
Yeah, than the others.
Is it noticeable, or does it?
I mean, it's
automatically
supposed
correct?
to. They all talk to each other and adjust the voltages and everything, so that all works out. But yeah,
hopefully. All right, comments from Andrew from AV Gadgets wanted to mention the improvements Sofabaton has made to the X1S remote after the latest firmware update. There's now a lot more control over Philips Hue lights available. It used to be just on and off, but now you can have zones, dimming, and individual light bulb control. It's also easier to add favorite keys to any activity, so he uses that now to be able to control his Philips Hue lighting from any activity. And Sofabaton has informed him that the new X2 model should be available in May. So for those who are eagerly awaiting the touchscreen remote, it's on the way.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew, for those updates.
Dazz has a couple comments here. Rob's mention of wearing many thin, breathable layers of cold for cold weather was good advice during his last 40-degree bike ride. By the way, it's 43 degrees this morning when I got up, and I will tell you, I will not be cycling.
Okay.
I will see you at 57.
Okay.
And I am not coming back out until it is 57. You should have seen the guys who arrived this morning when it was 43 degrees at 9:30 in the morning, and they were bundled up like they were going to go snow skiing.
Right.
This is Florida. We do not deal with this well. During his last 40-degree bike ride, he wore a thermal shirt, then a long-sleeved cycling jersey, then a windbreaker jacket he could unzip if he started to sweat too much, then cycling bibs and windbreaker jogger on the bottom, and that combo worked out much better than his first extremely sweaty experience. Problem with unbuttoning the windbreaker or unzipping the windbreaker is that if you leave it just a little bit zipped, it catches a bunch of air and turns into a sail and you puff up. And if you don't do that, then good luck getting it zipped back up without pulling over. So there is some compromise there. He received his Ascend CBM 170 SE speakers and replaced his HTM 200 SE surrounds with those. And while the 200 SEs got moved to surround back duty, he reran the Odyssey and he swears there was a small improvement. The CBM 170 SEs are a lot like the HTM 200 SEs, but just a little bit more in every way, according to his brain and not his ears.
Because he saw that they're a little bit bigger, so they must be a little bit more.
Must be more.
That's right. They're a little bigger.
Spent some money. Lastly, Ascend was kind enough to send them their new $10 flush mount brackets that they only offer on their website when you're ordering the new HTM 200 SE2 speakers, but he discovered a wrinkle. The new SE2 version has its mounting screws positioned vertically, while the SE versions HTM 200s have the mounting screws positioned horizontally. So the new bracket doesn't really fit ideally on the older model that he has. Just an FYI. So for those of you that are thinking that you're going to just grab those things, just know that they're going to be 90 degrees different than you thought.
That's right. Yeah. That is good to know.
And he also wanted to let us all know that he got a new puppy. So say hello to their American Bully XL, Cyrus Lee Dent. I don't know what XL is. Bully XL? That's a
I mean, it's American Bully XL. That is a breed. I looked it up, so it's slightly different from the American Bully
Dentley.
breed. Yeah, that's right.
The cutie.
It's a tiny little cute puppy, which apparently is going to be larger than that when it grows up.
I think they do expand as they age, much like my belly.
Right.
All right, let's get to the questions here. Chad has a Denon X3800H, wants to know if there's any way to show the video from one HDMI output, but play the audio from a different HDMI input. I'm sorry, I said output. I said but input for both. Specifically, he'd like to have music playing from his NVIDIA Shield, which he has plugged into the Denons Media Player HDMI port. And while that music is playing, he'd like to be able to feed the video feed on other HDMI inputs, such as the security cameras that are plugged into the AUX1 HDMI port. He doesn't particularly want to run an HDMI cable directly from the security camera's source to his TV. What? Wait a second.
So, I mean, simply put, can you be playing the audio from one HDMI input while showing the video from a different one? And the answer is no, unfortunately. There is the option to have the audio from one source playing while the video from a different HDMI source is playing, but the audio source has to be audio only. It has to be either the analog RCA inputs or an optical audio port. It can't be two HDMI sources at the same time to use that specific functionality. The workaround here, though, would be to do a bit of a Zone 2 hookup. Because what you could have is the main zone playing the audio from your NVIDIA Shield, but then have two HDMI cables running from your AV receiver to your television, one of them from the main zone output, the other one from the zone 2 output. And then you switch your television over to the second HDMI port, the one that's connected to the Zone 2 HDMI output of your AV receiver. And then you could be watching the video feed that's on Zone 2 while listening to the audio that's still in the main zone. So there is that workaround. You would want to make sure that your television speakers are actually fully turned off or completely turned down to 0, muted at all times, because when you plug the Zone 2 HDMI output of your Denon X3800H into a second HDMI input on your television, it is going to try to send the audio to the television. It will recognize that the television can play back audio, and it will try to send the Zone 2 audio to that. Now, if all you're watching are your security cameras, maybe they're not sending an audio signal anyway. So
that could be,
that might not be any sort of problem. But if there's any other sources where you were trying to view the video while listening to the HDMI audio of a different device in the main zone, then yeah, you just want to make sure that the television speakers are actually fully disabled or turned all the way down to mute. But yeah, that would be the workaround. So there's a few, remote button clicks you'd have to do in this, because now you're, starting whatever you want the audio playing in the main zone as normal. But then you're activating Zone 2, and then you're changing your television's input to the Zone 2 HDMI input. And it does mean running another HDMI cable, but from your Denon receiver to the television. You've already run one HDMI cable before, so you're just running a second one. So yeah, a few more button clicks. It might not be the smoothest switchover, but it can be done. That's the workaround.
Yeah, and if you can send audio via something else.
Right, yeah, if you could send it analog, that'll definitely work. Yeah.
Yes, because then and I've got an AV Gadgets article that'll help you do this, but you just set up another input, basically, where you take the HDMI from the source you want to see, which in this case would be the security cameras,
right,
and then the audio from, the other, the analog or digital
it has to be analog,
audio.
Yeah.
I think it could be
optical, yeah, just not HDMI,
not HDMI, basically, and then you can reassign it to this other input, and then you would have it. But you'll read the article.
Yeah, on the Denon, the way they do that is you actually choose for the main zone, for the only zone in this case, but for the main zone, you choose the audio device first. That's the input that you choose first, and then you press the options button on the remote, and you pull up, I think it's secondary video or something along that line.
Yeah.
And that lets you choose an HDMI video source as long as that original audio source was analog or optical.
And you can, like I said, it'll explain it to you in the article, but like if you, usually you have multiple inputs on the back of your AV receiver, and not all of them are in use. So you can take an input and just set it up so that it is this. It is exactly this. Now, if you want to change the audio source from time to time or the video source from time to time, well, then this doesn't work. Yeah. But if I'm always going to be watching this, the security camera, and I'm always going to be listening to this audio source, then you can just set up another one to be that, and it can replicate or duplicate an HDMI input that you have someplace else if you wanted to. So it's not like it's an either or thing. Joe, a few months ago, Rob and Joe had a private one-on-one video chat to discuss Joe's basement renovation project. He decided to support us via Patreon after that, and then the demo has begun on his basement, but then his attention got pulled away to fixing his deck and patio, so he's only now getting back to the basement project. It's a very large, wide open space. The left side will be a bar area, and in the middle will be at the home theater area, as it were. He's not really that much of a movie guy, but he'd like to have a decent surround sound set up for this area. And then there's the home gym on the right side. We have pictures. Yeah, I'm very confused.
Yeah, so first picture, that's the bar area, just looking straight at it. So that's
yes.
On the left side of the room, and then we're seeing actually from behind the bar to the entire stretch going over there. There's a whole section over to the right of that image behind the clothes that are hanging there that we can't see in this image, but there's a whole other back area to this room as well, beyond that support pole and beyond the clothes that are hanging on the right-hand side there. So it's a large, open, by no means, individual spaces, enclosed, dedicated space that we're dealing with here. So the sound can travel everywhere through this big open basement.
Yeah. So when you talked with Rob, he was saying how ideally he'd like to be able to have the same audio playing in all three areas whenever you want it, but then also have the ability to have different audio playing in all three areas separately. But they didn't want any of it to be overly complicated or expensive. And I want a real cheap but brand new Lamborghini. So here we are. Rob made 2 suggestions. You could get a Denon AV receiver for the TV area, then put Hios speakers in the bar and the gym areas. The issue there is that the bar and gym would pretty much be limited to using the Hios sub if he wants more bass output, and these are large, wide open areas, so that might be too challenging for the Hios speakers and sub. Do they still make those?
They are still available, yes. Yeah, they still have a whole Hios
lineup. That thing is...
That was before all the Massimo consumer nonsense going on.
Well, yeah, I know that. But even before that, I felt like Hios was sort of like limping along, waiting for someone to go, why are we still selling this?
They kind of reinvigorated at one point because they rebranded it to Denon Home. That's what Hios became. And they introduced a whole new series of Denon Home products. So, yeah, they kind of reinvigorated it at one point. But, yeah, it has been kind of limping along. I don't really think it is... sound quality output wise especially the best choice in this particular room.
So the second suggestion was to still get a Denon AV receiver for the TV area and then get WIM amps for the bar and gym area. So Rob said that if you got a Denon X4800H, provides 3 zones. So the zone 2 pre-outs could feed the bar area, the zone 3 pre-outs could feed the gym area. That would let him share the TV audio in all 3 areas anytime he wants. And then if you want different audio in different areas of the basement, he could just use the WIM amps. Mm-hmm. And with the WIM amps, you could use whatever speakers and subwoofers you want, so it's a little bit more flexible that way. Yeah. Joe figures he mainly cares about the TV area and bar being able to play the same audio at the same time, though. And he probably won't need to play the TV's audio in the gym area. So the Denon X3800 could handle that, and with its zone 2s, and that would keep the price down. So that's the way he was leaning, but now he's feeling kind of pressure to make a decision quickly. Don't do that. Don't do that, says the man who's been sitting on this vacant house for many months. Does it make any sense to even consider the Hios option when the future of all that former Sound United brands is so unknown? And if he sets all that up and then Hios goes out of business, it'll still work.
Yeah, but I mean, regardless, I mean, I do kind of feel like the Hios is convenient, but I don't really think it's the right solution here. You're so limited in your choices as to particularly the subwoofer options that work with it that I don't think that's really the way to go.
Yeah. So going with the WIM amp solution kind of seems like the safer option all around, but if he pre-wires for all of that, will it potentially be a problem if by the time he's ready to buy a receiver, Denon is gone, he'll be left scrambling to find an alternative? Can we put his mind at ease a little bit? What should he do? So I'm not going to disagree with Rob exactly, except to say that the warning here is that as much as I love AV receivers, I love Denon AV receivers, Marantz AV receivers, Yamaha AV receivers. I love receivers for what they give us. Mm-hmm. I have never been I've never walked out of an experience dealing with Zone 2 and Zone 3 and thought, well, that was easy. It's always been a little bit more complicated than I want it to be.
Okay.
And that's just my personal experience with them. Mm-hmm. I feel like, so your thought is you want to have the same audio in the bar area that you have in the TV area.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what you want to experience.
Football game is on. He wants the audio going to both of those areas synchronized at the same time. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I completely get that. Yeah. I think that there's no problems wanting that or desiring that or whatever. I do agree with you. I think that also having it in the what you call it area, the gym is probably not as necessary. Mm-hmm. So. To me, I would rather have the Denon do its thing by itself in the home theater, and the bar area is literally right there. I mean, it's open to it. Like there's no wall separating.
But I mean, how hard is it when you're demoing the room and everything's open to run an RCA cable that goes from where the receiver is going to live to where the WIM amp is going to live? Like that's
absolutely, absolutely.
That's all we're talking about.
I also see a world where speaker A, speaker B could be used here.
It could
because
be.
all you really want to do is, in theory, duplicate the front, left, and right speakers. Problem being, of course, that you might miss out a little bit on the if you're not playing it in stereo, you might miss out a little bit.
I mean, one of the reasons I recommended the Denons in particular is because they do the thing where you can have full surround sound going in the main zone and then simultaneously play that same audio in a down mixed 2-channel version out of zone 2, and in the case of the X4800H or 6800H out of zone 3 as well. So, the thing is, I mean, the thing he's really only worried about is, if Denon does go away, which they've said they're not going to, right? They're funded through 2025. We don't know what's going to happen in 2026, but they're funded through 2025. So, I mean, the chances of there literally not being a Denon receiver available to purchase is highly unlikely. But if something does go on and it makes you feel very uncomfortable to buy that, Yamaha is the other brand that also does the thing where you can have full surround sound going in the main zone, and then they provide a simultaneous 2-channel down mix for zone 2. So there's no sign that Yamaha receivers are going away. The limitation on Yamaha right now is that they don't have any models that go beyond 11 speakers in the main zone, but he's not looking to do that anyway. So I'm not worried that there's not going to be an option available to you. If somehow Denon and AVRant are both gone by the time you're ready to buy, there'll be a Yamaha that can do the job for you.
Well, and even then, I mean, they'll be gone, but they won't be gone. We'll be buying Denon receivers. If they died today, we'd still be buying Denon receivers next year.
Right.
So I would not. I mean, accessories for less would be like flush with them. So you have a problem with warranties and stuff.
I just don't see any reason to, when the walls and the ceiling are down, not run a pair of RCA cables. I mean, that is really not asking much.
I hear what you're saying, and I don't, like I said, I don't disagree with you.
Right.
I guess my only concern is that it's not going to be quite the fluid experience you might want.
Well, because it is a few button presses, right? You got to choose the audio that's in the main zone of the theater area, then turn on zone 2 and make sure it's tuned to the same source as the main zone. Then go over to your WIM amp and make sure it's going to its RCA inputs rather than its app input or its Bluetooth input or whatever. So, I mean, it's a few, things, but once you're used to that process, it's not that bad.
Yes. That's not what he said he wanted.
I know.
So I guess that's my only concern. I very much like the idea of, and like I said, I got no problems with zone 2s or zone 3s and using all those things as long as that's what you're down for. A lot of times when people, at least in my mind, when people say, I want something that's simple, that they're not necessarily talking about for themselves. They're thinking about everybody else that has to use this thing. They want it to be one button press if they can. Can you make it be one button press with something like a Harmony or a Sofabaton with a macros? You absolutely could. You just have to, it has to always be the same source that you're really looking at. And as long as that's the case, that's fine. But if you're thinking, sometimes I want to have different things over here, and then I want to be able to stream from my phone in one room and do something else over here, then I start looking at distribution amps, and some of those are really quite advanced in how you can do some of these things. But yes, it would mean that you would no longer be able to hear, just basically augment the audio that's coming from your AV receiver in the other room. I will say that, I don't know how this would work out exactly, but you're going to have two things playing the same audio at the same time, but potentially with different processing speeds going on. So if you're in the bar, suddenly the audio might be coming out slightly desynced from what's happening in the home theater. Shouldn't, but it might. So that might be a concern as well. You might end up at the end of this thing going, well, we can do it, but it ends up being a little confusing to listen to because of all the, what's happening with the WIM amp versus what's happening inside the Denon and these other things. So this might not be there may not be a really truly as perfect as you want it to be solution. There may be a little bit more work on your part to make it work, and even then it might be never exactly what you want, I guess, is my only concern.
Okay.
Stefan decided to get an RBH's Impression Series on-wall speakers for his front 3 surrounds. What are our thoughts on having all 3 front speakers behind a 120-inch 16:9 acoustically transparent screen? How wide apart should the front left and right speakers be if they were behind the screen? And what are our thoughts on using the 555 IWR model with a somewhat unusual woofer tweeter 5 driver or design? That's all the questions in one thing. So I know people are like, oh my God, 120 inches, that's a massive screen.
Not the people listening to this podcast.
It's big. I'm not saying it's not big.
It's bigger than the biggest consumer flat panel.
It is really comes down to your like the size of your couch and your seating distance and that sort of thing. That's why I like the false wall, even if the false wall is only inches in front of your regular wall, because it allows you to place those speakers exactly where you want them to be in relation to your seats. So rather than having to deal with fitting them directly behind the screen, and then you're like, well, I gotta screw them in a little bit because I don't want it to hit the bezel, or if that's not acoustically transparent, and blah 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 blah. So do I, by definition, have a problem with you putting these speakers behind a 120-inch 16:9 acoustically transparent screen? No, I do not. I do have a problem with you shoehorning them all back there when your couch is wider than 120 inches, or you're sitting so far away that you're not getting proper separation,
right? Like
as far as degrees. When you look at the degrees, you're supposed to be 45 degrees off of one, or whatever it is, 35 to 40 degrees off of your front left and right speakers.
A 45-degree total spread, so plus or minus 22.5 degrees, right, out to as much as a 60-degree total spread, plus or minus 30 degrees. 30. So yeah, okay, this is all very much it depends answer. Yeah. How close are you sitting to this proposed 120-inch screen? Because if you're sitting close enough that the edges of your screen are basically filling a 45-degree field of view, I mean, at that point, technically speaking, if you put the speakers inside the edges of the screen, I guess they're slightly narrower than the 45-degree total spread, but nothing so significant that I'd be concerned about you having them on the inside. And if they're to the outside edges, you're definitely going to be within the plus or minus 22.5 to plus or minus 30-degree window. So that works quite well. But I mean, some people like to sit very, very close, at which point it really only makes sense to put them within the edges of the screen, all 3 speakers behind. But many people sit far enough back that, it's filling a 40-degree field of view or a 35-degree field of view, at which point I would pretty clearly want to have the left and right speakers to the outside edges of the screen.
I think more often than not, that is the case. I hate to say it. And I know that people are like, well, what's the point of having an acoustically transparent screen?
Your center is still back there.
Behind.
Yeah, your center's still back there.
It's not for the other 2 speakers. People just started doing that so they could hide them.
It's very much it depends.
Yeah, okay. And then the second question within this first question is, what are our thoughts on the RBH design? I think it's fine.
I mean, I also just think that, so if he's going with a 120-inch screen, if he's thinking about sitting close enough that it makes sense to put all 3 of the speakers behind it, you don't need this model. You don't need this model. You can get 3 of the 55 IWRs, have 3 identical speakers going across left, center, right there, and they will absolutely have sufficient output for a 120-inch screen size that you're sitting close enough to that 120 inches is filling 45 degrees or more of your field of view. So that's how I feel about those.
Yeah. You buy the right speakers for your room and your seating distance.
If you're sitting far enough away from the 120-inch screen that
you need those speakers,
then they should be the outside of the screen. Except for the center.
So he would ideally like his subwoofers to be on-wall models as well, and RBH offers their 12SW on-wall. That's such a hard... I mean, I could
these exist,
bolt anything to a wall if I try hard enough. I'll put it to you that way. So RBH offers their 12SW, which is $1,400, and 1212SW, $2,000 models that fit this need. Beside the shape of their cabinets, what are the major differences between those 2 on-wall subwoofer models?
Extension.
One would think output and extension would be the differences. Yes.
Yeah, the 1212 is the considerably taller cabinet. These both have the same width and the same depth, but the 1212 is considerably taller. And also the 1212 SW, both of those drivers are active powered drivers, whereas in the 12 SW, even though it has two 12-inch surfaces, one of those is a passive radiator. So that's kind of where the name came from. The 12 SW is a single 12-inch active driver with a 12-inch passive radiator, whereas the 1212 SW is two actually active drivers. Now, the thing is, the specs that we're showing in the spec sheet are slightly misleading, because to get the actual frequency response that's being shown there, which the 1212 SW is spec to go all the way down to 20 hertz, whereas the 12 SW is not. In fact, what does it say there? Something like 35 hertz. To hit those numbers, you actually need to use the somewhat optional external power amplifier that RBH sells along with these things. The 12 SW does actually come with an amplifier built into it, but when you use the built-in amplifier, which is I think 1/4 of the wattage of the external amplifier that they attach to it, now the bass extension is like 42 hertz instead of 35. So if you're talking full-blown home theater, it's getting hard to justify going with that 12 SW model. I mean, I know the price is more attractive and it's physically smaller, but you're giving up considerable extension and performance by going with that.
I don't like either one of these for a full-blown home theater. What are we talking about here?
Well, I mean, the 1212 SW with the external amp gets kind of pricey. We're talking like $3,400 at that point, but it does go right down to 20 hertz at that point. But if you're getting a pair of them, whoo boy. So can we interest you in some cylinders?
Yeah. Can I interest you in a false wall?
Right.
some cylinder subs.
Because you can get 4 cylinders from SVS within the price.
Yeah.
Now you're rocking.
I just don't understand why it has to be on wall for subwoofers.
I mean, I think he's envisioning maybe a false wall thing. Maybe these subwoofers going behind the screen. I think that's what he's envisioning.
Yeah, but
this room has got to have a shadowy corner somewhere where a cylinder sub can absolutely disappear from your field of view.
Or just behind the couch that's near the back wall. So there's a less expensive option you could go for with his overhead Atmos speakers.
Sure.
Just so many.
This is RBH, man. This is RBH. So very neutral. We're not too worried about overhead. So right now you can still get the Sonance Mag 6 speakers that I like so much from Best Buy. They're not on the lowest price we've ever seen them, but they are still on sale for $160 a pair, which is maybe a third of the price of any of the RBH in ceiling speakers. You do want to, in my opinion, get the backer boxes that they have for them. Those are only $60 a pair. So we're talking $220 for a pair of the Sonance Mag 6 speakers from Best Buy, and they will match up very, very nicely with RBH Impression Series speakers.
There you go. So is the Elite Screens Aeon frame with Acoustic Pro UHD material a good choice for his 120-inch acoustically transparent screen? Again, it comes down to how close you're sitting.
It's pretty good, though. The UHD one is the one to get. That's 4K resolution easily. I'm a pretty big fan of that screen. I like it a lot. If you are trying to keep the price a little bit lower than what like Seymour AV. Seymour AV is probably my favorite for acoustically transparent screens, but there is no question they cost more. So the Elite Screens, the Acoustic Pro UHD, that's a nice screen material. It's not the last word in complete color neutrality, but as long as you have any sort of calibration controls built into your projector, you can absolutely compensate for what the screen very, very slightly tinges that image in terms of color accuracy. So I'm A-okay with going with an Elite Screens Acoustic Pro UHD.
And lastly, he asked, what if you wanted to go with a 135-inch screen size? Would a Epson 5050 UB projector from 17 feet away be able to handle that screen size? Well, 135 inches in general with almost any projector that's not like some sort of crazy high-end, basically like almost professional level projector. 135 inches is just about the limit of what you can do and still experience something that resembles high dynamic range from a distance.
It's genuine like cinema high dynamic range, which is standard dynamic range at the cinema is 50 nits, not 100 nits like you would get from a flat panel. The projector standard dynamic range is 50 nits, and then high dynamic range in the cinema is just slightly north of 100 nits. Right. So 135 is about sort of the upper limit for where you can really do that comfortably. But you can do that comfortably with an Epson 5050 UB. 135 is not too large to consider.
Yeah. But there's a reason why we've been more bullish on flat panel displays when you start looking at those numbers. Like, oh, well, I can get high dynamic range on my projector with a 135-inch screen. Well,
projector
you can get something
HDR, yes.
that they call high dynamic range for projectors.
There's
it's like setting the bar
tone
lower.
Mapping going on for sure.
You set the bar low enough, and anybody can clear it, and they have done that. The flat panels are just so much nicer. That's just me. I understand that at this screen size, though, you have to consider price quite a bit because of how expensive flat panels get. Until those micro LED displays start.
It's still a heck of a lot more money than an Epson 5050 UB and an Elite Screens projection screen.
That's right. Jay enjoys using concert discs to show off his system. He's partial to orchestral and symphony recordings. He's picked up John Williams in Vienna and Hans Zimmer in Prague. Do we have any recommendations with similarly high quality recordings? I do not, but it does look like that you do.
I put down the couple that you always mention, although they're not orchestral or symphonic.
No, so Dynamic Crawl, the one I have is not in Paris.
Oh, it's not the Live in Paris one?
No, it's Rio, I think.
Oh, okay.
One of those.
I knew it was Diana Krall, and that was the first one that came up. Yeah. But you always recommend Diana Krall and Blue Man Group, How to Be a Megastar. Very, very good recording quality, but they're not exactly orchestra. Although Blue Man Group is all like no voices, right?
No,
instrumental.
There's a little bit of singing on it.
A little bit,
okay. It's
so
noise.
Similarly from me, the two I've always recommended here are Chris Body in Boston, which. Yeah, it's not orchestral or symphonic, but again, it's primarily instrumental. There are a few singing songs in there as well, but really, really good production values. I can't imagine there wouldn't be at least a handful of tracks that you would really enjoy from Chris Body in Boston, so I really highly recommend that one. And then I've always recommended Where the Light Is, which is John Mayer's live performance in Los Angeles, but again, that's not symphonic or orchestral. So I just found a good website that lists like pretty much every Blu-ray concert disc that is out there at concertsondvd.com. You can look up their Blu-ray section, and it's pretty much all the concerts that are on Blu-ray. So a bunch of them I didn't know about. There's some there from like Yo-Yo Ma, from Pavarotti, from the Three Tenors, that groups like that. Where I'm like, okay, if you're into the orchestral and symphonic, maybe those will be up to your, the type of music that you're looking for. There's several, just Mozart and Bach and Beethoven type of recordings and that. So. Yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to find some there. But those ones I haven't heard to be able to say whether the quality is really, really stellar on those or not. I would be shocked if the Yo-Yo Ma recordings are not good quality because he tends to get personally involved, and it would be strange for those not to be of good quality.
All right. Jay recently subscribed to Tidal, and he's playing it through his Apple TV 4K. It seems way too quiet. He's got AVRant's Cinema 50 receiver and Golden Ear Triton reference towers cranked up to reference volume, and even then it's definitely not rock and roll. So any ideas how to fix that? This really feels like this is from either Tidal or from the app as it's created or installed on the Apple TV 4K, because it's certainly no excuse. There's no technical reason why it shouldn't be loud enough.
Yeah, there is a feature across all the app versions of Tidal where they do a track-to-track normalization. The idea being that whatever the recording level of whatever the tracks you're listening to, it tries to even them all out so that as you go from song to song, you're not varying wildly in volume levels. And that definitely errs on the side of retaining a whole bunch of headroom for the really loud songs. And so that probably, because it is on by default, the track-to-track normalization is on by default. So many people have reported that once you turn that off, you get a lot of the volume level back from songs where you were recording it, were expecting it. But that is one of the cases where sometimes you need to make that change in the web browser version of Tidal in order for it to apply to your phone app version and your streaming box app version, that similar to some of the other video streaming services where you have to make the change in the web browser version, log into your account there and make that change under your account. So that's worth checking, because you might have already checked that in the Apple TV 4K's own Tidal app and either not seen a normalization option or already turned it off. But yeah, that's one of those ones. Log in on a web browser to your Tidal account and make sure the normalization is turned off there under your account. That's the most likely thing that's going on here.
Okay. So he's using an Epson 5050 UV projector. When there are panning shots, it looks too swishy to him.
Yeah.
It hurts his eyes a bit. Some scenes are worse than others, but a prime example is the opening credits of Game of Thrones on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray. The animation during that is basically unwatchable to him. My man, I have experienced exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. About. Okay, I'm glad you know, because I wasn't sure what he's meaning.
Yeah, I think I know what he's talking about. It looks jerky as it goes around. Yeah. So he's using a Sony X800 M2 Ultra HD Blu-ray player. Any ideas if this is just a setting that he can fix, or is it just a consequence of using the Epson 5050 UV projector? And if so, what sort of projector we need to buy in order to eliminate this swishy panning effect? I mean, I don't know what fixes it other than I think it's a frame rate issue or something along those lines. I wasn't
sure what he meant by swishy. That was just that was the only word he used in his email, and I'm not entirely...
It looks like like there's some sort of interpolation going on.
Okay.
And it's trying to figure out where to put the image, and it's not quite doing it. I mean, you've seen it in motion. It's almost like a motion blur sort of thing.
Okay.
I wonder if how sometimes you have problems with text as it scrolls across the screen. I wonder if this is a similar issue he's experiencing, if it's something like that. I have noticed similar when panning things, but it never bothered me to the point that it's bothering you. So
this should be resolvable. If you have your Sony player set to output 24 frames per second, which is just an automatic setting in the Sony disc player. So look for 24 frames per second and make sure that's set to automatic. In the Epson, that one, if you're feeding it a 24 frames per second signal, it just does regular 5.5 pull down. The other thing is, though, that the wobbling, right? The 2K to 4K wobbling. I wonder if that's having an issue here, because if you're watching he was saying that he's watching the 4K Blu-ray, so you might not want to turn that off, so that you can still accept the 4K signal. It shouldn't be doing that, though. But that's the only other thing I can think of is that 4K wobbling of the panel that might have something to do with it. But this should be fixable. There should be something you can do with the 24 frames per second output from the Sony, making sure that you don't have like any de-judder or de-blur processing going on, because it should be able to just do straight 5.5 pull down and just show each of those 24 frames 5 times per second and eliminate this jerky motion.
Yeah. That Sony X800 M2 disc player sometimes locks up or crashes during playback. Seems to actually be worse with DVDs, although it sometimes happens with Blu-rays and Ultra HD Blu-rays too. And it sometimes happens with brand new discs fresh out of the package, so it can't just be dust, right?
Oh,
Typically, restoring the player gets it working again, but it's annoying. Any ideas? This supposedly isn't a cheapo player, but it sure seems to perform like one.
First of all, what's coming out of fresh, packaged discs these days, a lot of times there's manufacturing dust all over these things. They are not putting any quality control into what you're getting as far as Blu-rays and Ultra HD Blu-rays and DVDs anymore. So I would definitely clean any disc, even though it's fresh out of the package. There could absolutely just be a little bit of dust that has accumulated on the laser or the receptor inside that Blu-ray player, because I've had Blu-ray players where I just blow with my mouth, which you really shouldn't do, but into the disc slot, and all of a sudden the disc plays fine, which is a clear indication that there's usually just a little bit of dust. It's not very much. You wouldn't even see it if you were to look at it, but that laser and the receptor is a tiny little thing, so it doesn't take much. Also, as players age, the laser does weaken, and there's a very simple little potentiometer that's inside of every disc player that if you take it to a repair shop, all they do is turn the potentiometer up a little bit, and all of a sudden it's reading your discs fantastically again. So you can look up things on YouTube on just how to open up your disc player and turn that little potentiometer, because that one, I mean, don't turn the potentiometer all the way up as high as it goes. Yes, you're going to burn out your laser if you do that immediately. But they do a pretty good job in those little instructional videos. There's not much to it. You take the front cover off. There's one little thing that you turn with a screwdriver, and that boosts the power to the laser. So if you've had that player for a while, it's not out of question that it needs a little boost of power from that potentiometer.
All right. Henry has made a bunch of changes to his acoustic treatments, thanks to our advice, but back when he first wrote to us, he asked if we thought he should buy a pair of Paradigm Founder Series 70 LCR speakers, which would match the 70 LCR center speaker he already has, and put those oriented horizontally on his TV stand below his projection screen. His current...
Yeah, so he was like, he already has a center. It's horizontal. Yeah. Then he could get two more of the 70 LCR speakers, orient them also horizontally, all on top of the TV stand that's below his projector screen.
All right, that seems like a lot of horizontal speakers.
It would be.
His current front, left, and right speakers are Paradigm Founder Series 40B bookshelf speakers. Due to this room being narrow, they're as close to the front corners of the room as they possibly can be. So we guys suggested simply laying those B4 bookshelf speakers on their sides if he really wanted to put them on top of his TV stand instead. His floor is uneven in height, which he was able to deal with using the TV stand's adjustable feet, but he has always hated the aesthetics of the padding he has used under his front, left, and right speakers to level out their heights. But the 40B bookshelf speakers have slightly trapezoidal shape, and once he added some padding to make them level below his screen, they blocked a tiny bit of the image. We're going to see a picture here. You've probably already seen it.
White
on YouTube.
that he has just drawn in there. That he's like, that's where the speakers could potentially go horizontally on the TV stand below the screen.
Yeah, so he's back to square one. Do we think we should go ahead and get a pair of the 70 LCR speakers at this point? Oh, why is this room so blue? Can we start there?
It is a very blue room.
Yeah. It's a very blue room. I probably already said this, but I still hate this idea. I still do. I think that's... You basically are creating a mono experience.
Yeah, you're narrowing your soundstage for sure, because if you do 70 LCR speakers across the front, like the tweeters are in the middle of that speaker, so they're not even at the edges of this TV stand. So they are obviously closer together by being on the TV stand to begin with, and then the tweeters are even closer than that because the tweeters are in the middle of those speakers oriented horizontally. Yeah, you're getting not very much stereo separation when you do that.
Yeah, I don't like this idea. I would, in fact, at this point, I would just say, and I know you're not going to like this, first of all, if anybody in the world has, I know this is not a projector, right? This is not a projector. It
is a projector. Look at that screen.
Is it? Okay, I couldn't quite tell what I was saying. If anybody could say, should I put my speakers behind my screen? You, sir, are that person.
Yes.
So, if there are a way of getting an acoustically transparent screen and then just mounting your speakers to the wall behind it.
Those 70 LCR speakers, they ain't cheap. So the money you would have spent on them could go towards an acoustically transparent screen instead.
And it's not like you're going to be losing a whole bunch of anything. In fact, your screen might be a little closer to you. Might look better.
It would be closer to you. It would necessarily be closer to you. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that idea better than anything else.
Then the aesthetics of the speakers doesn't matter very much.
Yeah. Or giving up the center speaker entirely, going for a Phantom, and then I would still not get the LCRs because the center mounted tweeter, I want the tweeter on the outside as far as possible, honestly. Just trying to get as much separation in the high end, which is what you're more sensitive to anyways. Get your as much of that to the sides of the room as humanly possible.
And to me, if what's really bugging you about your current left and rights is the aesthetics, I'm like, just spend some money on some new stands, because there are speaker stands that have adjustable height feet. They're not as common, but they do exist. Yeah. Sure. I think I would do that. If that's what's bugging you, is not the sound but the aesthetics, then get some new speaker stands.
So either new speaker stands or acoustically transparent screen and put them on a shelf behind there. That's what's my suggestion. And no, I still don't like the LCR suggestion. I mean, I would sell all these speakers and get a couple of, I don't know, square bookshelf speakers that have the tweeter in a normal location, lie them on their sides and put them as far out as possible. But that's just me. It doesn't look like he's sitting very far away from this stuff either. So
I don't think so.
Maybe
not a gigantic room.
Maybe he doesn't need this these big old speakers. Karl put together his quote-unquote top 10 movies list of 2024. He declared a bunch of ties, so it's actually a top 18. Be decisive, man.
It's Karl. He couldn't be.
And all but one of them were viewed out of the house at a cinema. All but one of them he saw in the theaters, is what that sentence was trying to say. Wait, I don't understand this. What's
he's ranked them, but he's put slashes in there, so it's two.
I know,
different
but
movies.
what's number? So is number one the best?
I
and
guess
number 10
I
is
don't
the
know.
worst.
That I just copied. I didn't clarify on that.
Well, I'm going to start at 10. 10 is Civil War. 9 is Baby Girl / Hundreds of Beavers. Number 8 is Complete Unknown. Number 7 is Dune Part 2 / The Fall Guy. Number 6 is September 5th or La Chimera. Number 5 is Amelia Perez, another one like a / queer. I haven't heard of many of these movies.
Yeah, some of them I haven't heard of. Yeah.
4 Nickel Boy / The Joker Foley, whatever. The new one, the new Joker movie.
Folie à deux.
And number 3 was The Substance / We All Imagine as Light. All We Imagine as Light. All We Imagine as Light. I don't know what that is either. Number 2 is The Brutalist and Sing Sing. Those are 2 different movies. The Brutalist and Sing Sing. This sounds like something that would happen in Sing Sing, which is a prison, but whatever. And number 1 is, and again, he couldn't choose, so it's Eno / Enora.
I've heard of Enora. I haven't heard of Eno, so yeah.
Anyways, that's his rankings.
It was.
I haven't seen 10 movies in 2024.
Well, that was just it. I went back through our topic lists for the year of 2024. Now, I didn't limit myself to movies that actually came out in 2024 because I couldn't remember which ones had and which one hadn't. So this is just what I've seen in 2024. And I didn't really even bother writing down Tom's to remind him because there wasn't even a top 10 to make. So, was there anything that stood out that you watched in 2024 where you're just like, that was awesome?
Well, Dune Part 2 was amazing in many ways. I did see it at IMAX, and I was shocked at how quickly that movie went by.
Because it was a long running time, but yeah, they kept the pace.
It was. Most of the movies that came out this year, I did not. I even on Rob's list here, I'm looking. I'm like, I really wanted to see that. I really wanted to see that. I really wanted to see that, but I didn't. I will say Godzilla -1, which is on Rob's list as well, was very good. And we saw that as a family.
Yeah.
But I saw like the other Godzilla movie, the King of the Monsters one, or whatever the one is with Kong.
Godzilla by Kong, the new Empire.
Yeah, that was just, I mean,
that did not make my top 10.
It would not make my top Infinity.
I mean, it would make your top 10 simply because you saw fewer than 10 movies.
And I'm not putting that on the top 10. So there you go.
So I did my rankings and I didn't do splits, so mine is actually a top 10. And there were movies that I saw in 2024 that I very much enjoyed that did not make the list as a result of this ranking. But I'll do mine from 10 to 1. The Iron Claw, I put at number 10. Deadpool and Wolverine, I put at number 9. The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I put at number 8. That was surprisingly good to me. I was not expecting that to be nearly as good as it was. Number 7 was The Substance. Even though I really did not like the end, I loved the first 3/5, 4/5 so much that I couldn't not have it on the list. American Fiction, Smile 2, which impressed the heck out of me. I loved Smile 2. Dune Part 2 is on my list. Past Lives, which I don't think actually came out in 2024, but oh my goodness, if you want to see a love triangle done right, I talked about how much I didn't like the love triangle in Challengers. If
you didn't like the love triangle we talked about last week?
No, if you want to see a love triangle done right, if you want to see just the pathos and the pain, like not overdone, not melodramatic, just like the real oh my goodness, Past Lives. I love that movie. Number 2, Inside Out 2, which was fantastic. My goodness, I loved Inside Out 2. And then number 1, Godzilla -1. I couldn't put anything higher than that as far as just, amazingly awesome.
That was a good movie.
But I had a couple of special mentions. It wasn't in my top 10 favorite movies, but I really, really did like Longlegs, and I love having it in my back pocket because it's my perfect example of why changing aspect ratios and not using a CinemaScope screen is so important, because it's vital to me that you see the 4:3 portions in 4:3 and not crop them off and lose so much of the storytelling from doing that. And then, a movie that I absolutely hated. I hated every second of experiencing experience of watching it.
That was definitely not released in 2024, though.
It was definitely not, but I saw it in 2024, and that was the movie I Care a Lot, which is the movie that I think stuck with me the most. So I just had to give it a special mention because it wrecked my brain for weeks on end.
So awful.
It is so awful. I hated it so much that it had to make my top 10 list in a way as a special mention because it really impacted me.
Mm-hmm. So what are our home theater predictions for 2025? He predicted that JVC would release a new line of projectors in 2024, which came true, but not exactly the way he expected. This year, he's predicting the new Apple TV 4K model will launch in the fall. Yeah. I think that's probably a pretty good bet, actually.
I mean, what am I going to say? Cheaper 115-inch models? Because that seems already confirmed.
That's already, yeah. Micro LED is going to set, the modular micro LEDs might start becoming, they're going to start hearing more companies talk about that.
Well, you know what, I'll maybe go out on a little bit of a limb, is that there I mean, again, this is not based on nothing. There is the talk that TCL had, which is that they can manufacture like, what was it, 130 something inch LCDs. I don't think those are going to be available to purchase in North America in 2025. I think there's a chance that we'll see a 130 something inch LCD in Korea. Or in China. I think that's very much a pause. Somewhere in Asia, I think they might actually bring that thing out for sale. But I think they'll announce it. I think there'll be an official announcement of the 130 plus inch LCD TV from TCL somewhere in the world. I think there'll be an announcement of that in this year.
All right. Yeah. Is this the year that the AI bubble pops?
They won't let it.
I don't know. I feel like
this one they've thrown too much at it to let it pop.
Well, I think to a certain, there's going to be certain things that are definitely going to self-destruct, and the large language learning models, I think, are.
We just all have to adopt imaginary sons. That'll keep it going. Yeah.
Like, I can't believe that computer was gaslighting that guy into thinking he had a kid. Just amazing. Like, your wife will be home soon. I have a wife. She'll be home. Oh, she's actually hit some traffic. She's running late. She says, go ahead and head to the restaurant without her. We're going out? Yes. Right. Oh, you've got reservations at...
Yep. It's not far off, man. It's not far off.
Being gaslit until thinking you have a social life and people who love you. That's the real role of computers in our future.
Dream future.
Vince recently bought a 55-inch TCL QM7 series TV for his den. For the most part, he's very happy with it, but when he uses its built-in streaming apps, he's noticing Judder. He didn't come across any mentions of Judder being a problem in any professional review, so it's probably because nobody wants to use a stupid apps on the TVs anyway. So
they usually test them, though.
So is there some easy way to fix this? He's tried setting the D-Judder processing as high as he can tolerate without the soap opera effect kicking in too badly. But for him, that's like a setting of 2, and the Judder is still visible. So what can he do? You got to go through all your settings. You got to go through all your settings and make sure then deal with it.
The 24p processing, like even if it's coming in a 60p or 60i container, the TCLs, they don't even have a like real cinema or cinema motion setting for you to do. They just do it automatically. However, they do only do that 24 frames per second, like inverse telecine, the reverse 3:2 pull down thing, if you're using either the filmmaker mode if it's present or the movie picture mode. So the only thing I can think of, Vince, is are you using a picture mode other than filmmaker or movie? Because that could be the reason in, for example, the game picture mode, which maybe he chose, right? Maybe he chose the game picture mode because he's using a game system as his primary source. Like, why would I go off of that input if that's my only external input? I'm doing all my streaming from the built-in apps. If you're on the game picture mode, it just does straight frame doubling. So 60 just becomes 120. There's no inverse telecine or a reverse 3:2 pull down. So that's about the only thing I can think of, because the TCL, the QM7 for sure, it does the 24 frames per second processing automatically. There's no setting for you to change there, but you do need to be in either the filmmaker mode or the movie picture mode. So that's the only thing I can think of. It's certainly possible, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, there could be some other setting going on wrong. Who knows? Infinite Gary, when Massimo clarified that discontinued operations of Massimo Consumer, the former Sound United brands, is just a financial classification, they mentioned that product roadmaps and budgets for 2025 have already been set and would carry through despite reclassification. So do we expect to actually see any new models from Denon or Marantz in 2025. I expect them to announce new things.
I mean, Marantz already announced their wireless speakers that I haven't bothered to talk about because they're so overpriced that I don't even really think they're worth mentioning, but they already announced those. The A10H receiver that Denon brought out last year, that was a complete surprise to me. I didn't know that thing was coming. I didn't really think that it would, but there that was. I don't know, though. What? I mean, we just don't know.
They just came out with receivers, right? I mean...
Well, 2022. Yeah, that was sort of the last.
I think they might show something at CEDIA, which will be in October. I think they might show something. Now, whether or not those things will be vaporware or will really exist remains to be seen.
Are they going to be going after HDMI 2.2? Probably not this year. I don't think so this year. Yeah, very unknown. That would be that's beyond just speculation. That's guess as far as that one goes. So I don't know, Gary.
Jonathan has been using a Denon S940H receiver with a pair of tower speakers in his living room. Won't tell us the tower speakers. It's funny. In his living room, 80% TV watching and 20% music. They'd really like to free up the floor space by eliminating the tower speakers from his room. He's got his dedicated C-Den cinema downstairs, so he doesn't mind having a lesser audio system in the living room, but it's an open floor plan. They do like to play music sometimes. So whatever he replaces the towers with needs to be able to play loud enough. He only wants to spend a max of $400, and they'd favor a soundbar type form factor. What are these towers?
A lot of challenges going on here. Yeah.
There's some obfuscation happening. It must be absolute Walmart trash. So is there something he could wire to his current Denon S940H receiver? Should he be aiming to go wireless with some kind of Bluetooth connection maybe? Or should he... wireless. So should he ditch the receiver along with the towers and just use an actual soundbar with his TV? His sources are a DirecTV box and an Apple TV 4K. So, I mean... So this is his living room, right? It's an open concept or whatever.
Yeah, it's wide open. It's living room.
There are soundbars that profess to be able to play very, very loud and fill up large spaces.
But not for $400.
Right.
Yeah.
And not only that, with two sources, and I hate to say this, but with two sources, you end up having to either use eARC, or or ARC or something along those lines, or you have a sound bar if you're going to go with a sound bar that is because I'm thinking of getting rid of the AV receiver if you're going with a sound bar. Sound bars and receivers don't go together. Or you need to have a receiver that you're connected via like analog or something like that, so that the TV can do the switching for you fairly easily without you having to rely on eARC, because you certainly don't want to do that. Because $400 sound bars where you can plug your sources into the sound bars and then have them do the switching for you is not $400. So, what's the solution here? I
mean, I've got two that will function. I don't really know if they'll truly play loud enough. If you're really dead set on that soundbar form factor. Not that old, this model, JBL's Bar 500, which is a single bar. It doesn't have any wireless surround speakers or anything attached to it. But it'll process all the way up to Atmos. It's got like a 5.1 driver complement along with its wireless subwoofer. There's a 10-inch sub. It's not too bad. And it's retail price $600, but they're on sale right now for $400. So it just squeaks under the budget. Now, it's on the louder side for a soundbar. It can genuinely output about 96 decibels from 1 meter away. But that's clearly not cinema reference, and I don't know with all the open space if that is going to be loud enough, but there aren't very many other options at the $400 price point that are going to get any louder, and definitely none that I would say are going to sound any better. So if this really is all about the form factor, then the JBL Bar 500, buy it from someplace you can return it. Like Crutchfield definitely has it on sale right now, and they do accept returns. So you might might give that one a try. The other one would be get a pair of self-powered speakers. And so in this price range, I'm looking at Fluence. They're larger ones. They're AI60s, or AI60 ones, not the AI40 ones that we recommend for desktop setups all the time, but the AI60 ones are larger. $300 for the pair.
And by larger, they are definitely larger.
Oh, yeah.
The 41s are not small by any stretch. But I don't know that I would trust them to completely fill a space.
And you'd probably want to add a subwoofer, which you can definitely do to the Fluence AI61s. They have a subwoofer output. They apply a crossover the way they should once a subwoofer is plugged into it. But now you're obviously going over $400 total once you add a half-decent subwoofer to those Fluence AI61s.
To have the TV doing the switching for you sort of situation.
Yeah.
That's kind of your best bet there. One of those.
That's as much because I mean, if you get there are passive speaker bars that could attach to your Denon receiver, but they have no bass, so you absolutely must have a subwoofer attached to any of those passive speaker bars. And any of the ones that I consider decent sounding are well more than $400.
Right. You can look for the ones that are like the platforms if you ever see those.
Like the Z-Box ones?
Yeah, the Z-Box ones, which will have more bass.
I haven't seen those around in a while, though. I don't know if anybody's making those anymore.
I haven't reviewed one in a hot minute.
It's been a while.
But they still exist, and they do have I've always had a problem with those things as a concept, because you're supposed to put your TV on top of it, and then the thing's got bass, and then it's what? You're shaking your whole TV? I mean, it's not like it's going to cause the entire picture to vibrate, but it might if you're trying to fill up the entire room.
If you actually have a TV with a central pedestal stand that are often a little bit wobbly, which are the only ones that could stand on top of those speaker bases. Yeah, they've kind of done away with those because the form factor of the TV's changed. So
yeah. I don't know. You're asking for a lot for $400.
You really are.
I guess that's what it comes down
to.
The
those
budget's
two,
not realistic.
Get them from places you can return them. I think they're maybe worth a shot.
Yeah, I would try to see the Fluence speakers in person before I purchased, if at all possible. Yeah. See where you can purchase them locally, because they are not small. They are still bookshelf speakers.
But you need that for the output you're talking about. You need the size.
Yeah, you do. You know what you should do is you should upgrade something in your home theater and move it up to this room. That's what you should do. Then you can stretch your budget a little bit. John/Adam.
Yeah, I don't know how to address him anymore, because at one point he clearly signed his email as John, so I've called him John for years, but recently he was like, yeah, if you're contacting, then use Adam. So I just didn't want him to not know who we're talking about. So John or Adam, I'm happy to address you however you want. Just let me know.
Just let us know your pronouns, my man. Or
name in this case.
Name in this case, exactly. John/Adam wants to pick up a new 65-inch TV. They are aiming for maximum features at the lowest price, so they've been researching the newest mini LED backlit full array local dimming TV options from both Roku and Amazon Fire TV Omni. What?
Amazon Fire TV Omni are the actual televisions with the Amazon Fire TV OS built into them, sold by Amazon, of course. Yeah.
But why does it have to have these things? Why can't it be not Roku or Amazon Fire
Well, just
TV?
because they espouse to be the least expensive. So he's like, I just want to see what they have to offer.
All right. So Ertings has reviewed and measured the Roku 65R8B5, which is also one of the least expensive 65-inch mini LED TVs out there, selling it for under $800. Ertings noted the high native contrast from its VA-type LCD panels is just shy of 7,900 to 1, but with its full-array local dimming tested, it produced a surprisingly high 115,000 to 1 contrast ratio. So there you go. Which is higher than the similarly priced TCL QM7 or the more expensive, which is $1,000, Hisense U7N that has garnered most of Erting's recommendation awards for this segment of the market. And then there's the 1090 Amazon Fire TV Omni Mini LED series, which Ertings has not measured or reviewed yet, but they claim, and some other review sites have measured, the highest light output of this bunch. So he wants to know, can all these TVs do 4K at 120 hertz with VRR and HDR, and are any of them clearly better at these gaming features than others? You read reviews and it doesn't mention that, whether or not they can do this. I'm shocked that these reviews don't have them in there.
I'm not sure. Well, maybe he's just wanting to confirm. All 4 of those options do support 4K at 120 hertz with variable refresh rate with HDR10. Now, not all of them will do 4K at 120 hertz with Dolby Vision while gaming. The TCL will, and I believe the Hisense will. Neither the Roku nor the Amazon will do Dolby Vision while gaming at 120 hertz. They are limited to 60 hertz if it's Dolby Vision specifically. So the TCL for sure, the Hisense I'm pretty sure, but the TCL for definite sure does Dolby Vision at 120 hertz while gaming. So it has the advantage there.
There you go. So have we been able to find native contrast ratio and local dimming contrast measurements for the Amazon Fire TV Omni Mini LED series? Does it compete or outperform the rest of these options?
I haven't been able to find those measurements specifically, but they are either using the panels that Hisense or TCL uses. There's no world in which they're using different OEM panels than either of those. There's also no world in which out of this selection I buy anything other than the TCL QM751. That's the one to get. It's $2 more expensive than the Roku. Like there's no reason not to get the TCL in this case. That's the one to get. Go get the TCL QM751 if this is the price range you're looking at.
Anonymous has a Epson 5050 UV projector recently acquired. They've had an older projection setup for many years. They didn't say what the old projector was, but it didn't have the deep black levels of the 5050, so it was being used with a 120-inch gray daylight screen to try to deepen the black levels. This is in a dedicated theater room with good, but not 100% perfect light control. The walls and ceilings are brown, not black. We'll burn the house down. Just burn it to the ground, start over.
Sure. There's no fixing that.
There's no fixing it. I mean, we just saw a blue room, so, there you go. And there are heavy drapes over the windows. I will say that for those of you that looked at the picture of that blue room and were like, oh my God, I could never live in such a place. These pictures that you take of your rooms, they always look weird.
Oh, yeah. Camera representation does not look like real life to your eyes.
Yeah. So I bet that room does not look nearly as blue as that. So let's just put that out there. There are heavy drapes over the windows, and a little bit of light can come in during the day around the edges. Viewing is mostly at night, though, so it's a very dark room when the projector is typically in use. Yeah. You have 100% light control. Let's just say that.
Well, I mean, it's not a literal bat cave, but yeah, this is the point is
if you're
this
doing
is not
it at night most of the time. Come on,
this is not a high ambient light room. I was just like, when I first saw gray screen, I'm like, oh, was he trying to do an ambient light rejection sort of thing? But no, it's a darkened dedicated room.
Yeah. So with the Epson's 5050 UB's lens about 13 feet away from the 120-inch gray daylight screen, and he's not getting the picture contrast they were expecting. They've been wanting to upgrade to a 135-inch white silver ticket screen, but the current look of the image has them concerned. Is 135 inches going to be too large for the Epson 5050 UB to handle, especially with HDR? We just talked about that.
Yeah.
My concern before, and without having looked anything up, of course, is whether or not, would he say 13 feet away? 13 feet away is too close to do a 135-inch image.
I looked at the Projector Central calculator.
Yeah, it will do HDR as projectors define it, not necessarily as flat screens define it, but you're not comparing it to a flat screen, so it will do that. And I think if you can get 135 inches out of 13 feet with the projector calculator thing, then just make sure you're measuring the right thing. Yeah, it's 13 feet lens to screen, not 13 feet back of the, where the wire comes out.
If it's literally 13 feet from the lens to the screen, that is not enough distance to throw a 135-inch image with the Epson 5050 UB. It needs 13 and a half feet from the lens to the screen to throw a 135-inch image. So he said it was about 13 feet. It might be just enough wiggle room, but you got to be a little bit careful there. It's no problem for throwing the 120. That obviously you've seen that, but you're towards the wide angle side of the lens for sure, even at the 120. That's something to be aware of. Now, this is all about, what were the expectations? Because it's not the contrast you were expecting, but does that mean something is wrong, or does that just mean you were thinking that the Epson 5050 is going to get you flat panel light contrast versus your old projector because the contrast specification is so much higher on the Epson 5050 UB, but that isn't the case. So this is a matter of we don't know what your expectations were versus what you're actually seeing, because I mean there are settings that can be changed. If you're mostly looking at HDR, there's that whole 16-step HDR tone mapping slider that can make a very big difference. It's basically like changing the gamma setting while you're watching SDR. It can make a significant difference in terms of shadow detail and highlight detail and how that looks. When you're talking the contrast, right, it's the difference between what can I see in the shadows versus what can I see in the highlights. And if you're crushing the dark end or blowing out the white end, then the contrast just doesn't appear to be there. But that 16-step slider can make a big difference when you're watching HDR. It's a very significant difference that adjusting that slider can have. So yeah, I would definitely look at that. There are many places, including Projector Central and Projector Reviews, who have posted comprehensive setting guides for the Epson 5050UB in particular, or it might be under the Epson 6050UB, which is exactly the same. The settings are exactly the same. So I would just carefully go through that, and I would play with that 16-step slider for HDR. But if you were just expecting it to look like a 120-inch OLED, I got bad news for you. It's never going to look like that. The black is never going to be as inky as an OLED black, and the brights are never going to be 1,000 nit brights. It's going to be 100 nits in HDR, and that's with the lamp on high. So, yeah. Expectations might just have been out of whack. That's very possible here.
Are Brandon and Eliezer in the same question for a reason?
No, I just forgot to renumber things because I inserted one there, so that's all that's going on there, yeah.
All right, we'll do Brandon, then we'll be done. Brandon, we said the Send Sierra RAL front speakers with either a Send HDM 200 SE2 Atmos overheads or KEF Atmos overheads would be totally fine. What about surrounds? What do you think we're going to say? Just take a wild guess. Could KEF surrounds be used with a Send Sierra RAL front speakers without too noticeable a timbre match? With RBH Impression series speakers with their folded ribbon tweeters maybe be a better match as surrounds? It's going to matter zero much, I think.
I just say zero.
Wow. Rob is going to go, if you put stupid ear right next to
for the
thing, you'll
overheads,
hear a difference. But the reality...
For the overheads, I'm going to say it's zero. But for surrounds,
you're not going to hear it. It's surrounds, please.
I mean, I'm tempted to say if you're this worried about it, Ascend has those.
I don't think people are.
No, but
I don't think they are.
But I think Brandon is. He's asking specifically. He's this worried.
I don't think he's that worried. I think he's just curious.
It could be. But if you're worried,
there's a big difference between worried and curious.
If you're this worried about it, do keep in mind Ascend does have their Sierra Luna, their Sierra Duo. Wall
Rob's
mountable.
Happy to help you spend more money.
It is a lot more money. It's a lot more money than the RBH Impression Reference series. It's a lot more money than HDM 200 SE2s for sure. Way more money than those. Now KEF, I mean that's an interesting one because if you put those side by side, do a flat A/B comparison, Sierra RALs versus KEF, I mean, even KEF R series. Because if you're up to KEF R series, you might as well just get the Sierra Lunas or the Sierra Duos. Because the price difference doesn't make any sense. So we're really talking about KEF Q series, right? Or we're talking in-wall KEFs or something like that. I mean, the Q series now, the Q Meta series from KEF, they have a nice on-wall model in that speaker lineup, which is, I think, a little overpriced, but still less expensive than getting Sierra Lunas or Sierra Duos. And then, of course, they have a whole bunch of in-wall speakers that maybe he's considering there. I mean, I can't say that it's a perfect timbre match between Sierra RALs and KEF Q series.
No.
It's not.
Perfect,
that's not a perfect
is hard to say,
match.
but I mean, we've said it before, and I'll die on this hill. Yeah. Your placement in the room is going to make your actually perfectly matched speakers not sound actually perfectly matched. It's just, as they come at you from different angles or bouncing off of different stuff and all sorts of other things that can happen. I just don't think it's going to make a substantive difference. We're all talking about in all of these, we're talking about exceedingly neutral speakers whose whole purpose is to give you as accurate a playback as humanly possible. They have some differences. They have some slight timbre differences that just go along with design choices they've made and ways of dealing with off-axis response and how they want things to sound and how easy they are to place in a room or place in certain orientations. All these things have gone into the design decision because there's with infinite money they could maybe all sound exactly the same, but since they have to sell them for a certain price, they do have some design constraints. And of course, output and bass extension and a bunch of other things all go along in that. But a speaker that is, 22.5 degrees to your left and a speaker that's 100 degrees to your left and up above your head a little bit.
What if it's 90 and it's right there and it's critical listening and it's going right to his ear?
Just to that one ear, but the other one's not. Guess what? They don't sound the same. They don't sound so not the same that you cannot tell.
Yeah,
that you're gonna go, oh my god,
I'm gonna have to get.
I'm
ears.
taken out of this experience.
I'm gonna have to get ears
You've
on.
ruined
with
it for me.
The new RBH impression reference series because I haven't heard them yet. I can't say. I mean, I trust RBH that they've made a neutral speaker. Neutral speaker.
Yeah.
And the folded ribbon tweeters, I mean, they do have fast transient response. So,
yes,
if I had to take a flyer, a slight guess, an educated guess, I'd say maybe those impression reference series with that folded ribbon tweeter. I'm like, maybe I'll give them a little bit of the edge here. That is without having heard them. I cannot confirm, but if I'm going to take a little flyer, maybe I'll.
I think seconds after starting any content that you're listening to, you're like, oh, I'm not listening. It's the minute you stop like trying to hear a difference, you'll never hear a difference.
Fair enough.
So we'd like to pick up an inexpensive receiver from Accessories for Less for a bedroom. It'd be a 5.2 speaker configuration, no more speakers than that, and he'd like the receiver to have HEOS. Would it be worth spending more to get a higher level of Odyssey, and what's the best bang for the buck option in this case? I mean, so multi-EQ is sort of the lowest level of Odyssey I would accept for myself. I don't even know that they offer anything lower.
Yeah, the 2
anymore.
EQ has basically gone away. The 2 EQ was not worth having, and that's basically gone away. So, yeah, just regular multi-EQ.
I
when
think
price
it's
matters
fine.
more.
Yeah.
So I would point you at Accessories for Less right now. They're selling it is the older model, but it's the S760H in Denons lineup. They're selling that for $300. And you're like, well, there's even less expensive ones that stop at 5.2. Why would you point me to the 7.2 model when that isn't even upgrading Odyssey? But the reason I'm doing that these days is because A, the price is not significantly higher. We're talking $300 here. And B, I like to have the ability to have it accept an Atmos signal. It'll be doing the Atmos height virtualization, but it will still say height Atmos on the front. It'll do the Atmos height virtualization. The reason I like recommending that these days is because the bit rates that the streaming services are sending when you get the Atmos soundtrack are significantly higher than when they send you the more heavily compressed 5.1 or stereo streaming audio tracks. So if you want the better, slightly less data compressed, higher bitrate audio tracks, and you're paying for the upper tiers of the streaming services, because that's the only way you're getting Atmos anymore is by getting their higher end tiers. But if you want to be able to support that, even with just 5 speakers, this does support the Atmos height virtualization, and it lets you still say Atmos on the front and get those higher bitrate streams. So for $300, which is like $30 more than the step down, I just like having that flexibility. So the 760H will get the job done.
All right, who do we have left?
Can we not do Eliezer's? He's been away for so long, and it's a 2-second answer. Let's just... the answer's so short.
Let me scroll. Where are we at? We're
Eliezer, 13.
Eliezer has been away from listening to AVRant for quite some time, and during that time away, he got married, and his wife has... yes. Or condolences. I don't know how it's going.
I think it's going all right from what he's about to say, yeah.
All right, sounds good. His wife has brought her 65-inch Samsung TV, which is an upgrade from what Eliezer had. So you married her for the TV.
Married her for the TV, yes, very clearly.
Honestly, my wife had a nicer TV than me when I got married, too. It's funny. I think I know a lot of guys.
And he wasn't willing to wait for the woman who came along with the 115-inch TV, so, snapped her up.
He'd been going along just fine with 2-channel stereo setup, but with the new, larger TV in place, he's decided to expand his PSB Image T5 tower setup to 5.1 surround sound. He scored a matching PSB Image center speaker, which he was really happy about since PSB series has been discontinued for quite a few years now. And his new SVS subwoofer just arrived, so all he needs now are a pair of surround speakers. He found some PSB Alpha bookshelf speakers for sale at an attractive price. They aren't the same series as his tower or center. Do we think this will be a problem?
Not one iota from PSB. They are very much to that Canadian sound NRT NRC measured sound, and you can definitely mix and match different series of PSB speakers, no problem.
And probably different Canadian brands.
Very much so, yeah.
Paradigm or
Axiom for that matter. Yep, no problem.
Yeah. Also, they are rear ported, and its placement options would mean they only have 2 or 3 inches from the rear ports to the wall. Is that okay? Are there some other speakers you should get instead? Like we said, you could probably find something else. In fact, I would venture to say most of this, again, we're talking about surround speakers. So any neutral speaker will work well in this. So you're thinking about CAF, or you're thinking about RBH, or you're thinking about, I don't know, just so many things that are out there. I mean, SVS.
Some
you
PSP
just ordered from SVS
at an attractive price, and there's no reason not to get them. He's like, he's basically asking us: is there any reason not to get these PSP Alpha bookshelf speakers? No. Are they because they're a different series, but still from PSP, not a good match? Nope, perfectly fine to use that. And they have rear ports, but they're only going to be 2 to 3 inches from the wall. They need to be 1.5 inches. They need to be 1.5 inches. You're more than that, you're fine. So there's no reason not to get these. That's why it's a short and easy answer.
It's very easy.
So left on the list, we have Anthony and Tony B, which I think, that is the super duper long one there.
It is very long. I had to scroll way past that thing to see that there's another one down there.
Yeah, those questions I had put there. But Saucy and Steve also sent in questions that I did receive. So just letting you know, they are in the queue for next week.
All right. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank our 132 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, once again, that is patreon.com/AVRant podcast. You can sign up there to make an automatic monthly donation. And a big thanks to our 132 patrons who have done just that.
We want to thank Gurinder for sending some movie codes for Rob to test out. Brandon for sending me a gift card. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon.
And for Nathan for letting me adapt any of his Substack articles to AV Gadgets if I need to.
Thank you, Nathan.
We also thank those who sent in notes of gratitude, including Stefan, J, Gurinder, Karl, Vince, Dan, Nathan D, Nathan W, Dazz, Eliezer, Anthony, and Tony. Thank you very much for thanking us.
And I will say the names one more time: Stefan, J, Gurinder, Karl, Vince, Dan, Nathan, other Nathan, Dazz, Eliezer, Anthony, and Tony. Thank you all very much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. We really, really appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AV Rant.
Now go out and listen to something.